The room smells like burnt ink and melting plastic. The heat press hums in the corner, steady and mechanical, like a heartbeat that belongs to something that has never felt guilt. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting a cold, pale glow across the concrete walls, across the steel table, across your hands. And in those hands, a passport. You lift it under the UV lamp and watch the hologram shift and scatter light in exactly the pattern it's supposed to. The watermark shimmers beneath the surface. The paper stock is identical in weight and texture to the real thing. Every security thread sits precisely where it should. Every barcode will scan clean at any border in the world. This is not a forgery. This is a masterpiece. And for this single document, a man you have never met will pay you $30,000. You set it down. Peel off your gloves and stare at your hands under the lamp. 2 years ago, these hands were stained with cheap ink, shaking at a kitchen table staring at a stack of bills you couldn't pay, while your wife sat across from you, wearing that careful, measured calm she used like armor to protect you from how scared she really was. Now they touch paper and turn it into $30,000. This is the story of how that happened and what it cost you. 2 years ago, you ran a small print shop on a street the rest of the city had forgotten. Your printer jammed every 40 minutes. Customers were rare. The bills came in every week without fail. Rent, electricity, loan repayments on equipment that barely worked. You kept them in a stack on the corner of your desk because filing them away felt like pretending they didn't exist. Your wife Nadia was 3 months pregnant when the worst of it hit. She never complained. That was what broke you most. She would sit across from you at dinner with that careful calm, ask how the shop was going, and you would say, "Fine." And in the silence that followed, you could hear everything neither of you were saying. At night, you lay awake, listening to water drip from a crack in the ceiling into a plastic bucket in the corner of the bedroom. You stared into the dark, thinking about the prenatal appointment the next morning and whether the card would go through. You reached for Nadia's hand, and she was already awake, already holding yours before you got there. Neither of you spoke. There was nothing to say the silence hadn't already said. Then one evening, the right opportunity walked in. Sharp suit, expensive shoes, cologne that cut through the toner smell like a blade. He placed a folder on your desk and slid it across without introduction. Inside passports, visas, government permits. Every one a forgery so precise, your first instinct was that they were real. He needed exact replicas. The payment 10 times your monthly income. Cash. Your conscience moved immediately. You knew exactly what world this belonged to. But then you thought about Nadia's hand finding yours in the dark before you reached for hers. You thought about the bucket in the corner of the bedroom. You took the job. That night, you sent Nadia to her sister's place and went to work alone. You didn't sleep. You studied every millimeter of those documents. Ink saturation, laminate thickness, the exact angle of the watermark under light. You ran test prints, found flaws invisible to any normal eye that you couldn't accept, and ran them again. At 4 a.m, the final print came out. You held it beside the original. You could not tell them apart. You sat back and looked at your hands, terrified. And something else you didn't want to name because naming it would mean owning it. Pride. 3 days later, he returned, examined the documents without speaking, and left an envelope on the table. Enough to clear every bill on the desk. Enough for the hospital. Enough to let Nadia sleep without the armor she had been wearing for months. As he left, he turned back and said, "Don't waste those hands on cheap ink anymore. They were born to redraw fate for people who need to disappear." You told yourself it was just once. But that night, when you got home, and Nadia held you and said she didn't know what the job was, But thank you. The relief in her voice settled into your chest like a door locking from the inside. And you knew you would do it again. The orders came slowly at first, always at night, always through the back door, never real names, commercial invoices, then medical certificates, then driver's licenses, then residency permits. Each step deeper, each step paved with money that showed up in your life as real things, a paid bill, a new printer. Nadia's face at dinner without that careful calm she used to wear like armor. Her daughter was born on a Tuesday morning. You held her 20 minutes after she arrived, this small, complete person who had no idea what her father's hands had been doing while she was being made. You looked at her face and felt something crack open in your chest that has never fully closed since. You named her Lena. You told yourself you were doing this for her. You upgraded everything. Laser printers, hologram laminators, a secret basement 3 neighborhoods away with reinforced doors and a surveillance system. You developed your own hologram technique using a purple laser and a polymer film you formulated yourself after hundreds of hours of testing. You built a private database of thousands of seals and barcodes from government agencies across 40 countries. From the outside quiet neighborhood, nice car, healthy child, a wife who had stopped asking careful questions at dinner. You had become the provider you promised yourself you would be. But underground, your name was moving through a world you were trying not to look at. They called you the Golden Hand. Not one document had ever been flagged at any border, anywhere in the world. And the clients who came now weren't desperate people running from bad situations. They were the people creating bad situations. Traffickers, kingpins, men whose photographs you recognized from news reports that arrived before their orders did. One night, Nadia found you at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. She made tea, sat across from you, and looked at you with those eyes that always saw more than you showed her. "Are we okay?" she said. "We're okay," you said. She held your gaze for 3 seconds, nodded, drank her tea. And in the silence between you was everything she wasn't asking and everything you weren't telling her, filling the space like a third person at the table. Then came the night everything changed. You were finishing a batch when the news cut to a breaking report. A port city, a shipping container. 17 women and children rescued hollow-eyed, barely conscious, blinking in the light like they had forgotten it existed. The ringleader arrested at the airport. The camera zoomed in on the passport he was carrying. You recognized it before you processed what you were seeing. Not the name, not the face, the hologram. A reflection pattern at 45 degrees that was entirely your own. A technical signature built into your process through hundreds of hours of refinement. Invisible to any scanner, invisible to any inspector. But not to you. You had made that passport. You had given that man a clean identity and an undetectable path, and he had used both to move 17 human beings in a sealed metal container across 3 international borders. You drove home in silence. You stood in Lena's doorway, watching her sleep. That small face completely still, breathing with the easy rhythm of someone who has never had reason not to trust the world. You thought about the children in that container blinking in the sudden light, and you understood that between your workshop and that harbor was a direct line, and your hands were at one end of it. You went to the kitchen. Nadia appeared in the doorway. She looked at you, not the careful look this time. Something else. Something that said she had been waiting for this moment longer than you knew. She sat beside you and put her hand over yours on the table. Neither of you slept. You decided to stop. You contacted the man who had started everything, told him you were finished. 3 seconds of silence. Then his voice. Flat, cold, worse than anger. You know too many faces, too many names. Nobody leaves by saying goodbye. A pause. I know what time Nadia goes to the market on Thursdays. I know which kindergarten Lena attends. I know her favorite seat in the classroom. 2 weeks. The line went dead. You sat without moving for a long time. Then you understood with complete clarity that you hadn't built a business. You had built a cage, and your family was inside it with you. One night, Nadia sat across from you at 3 in the morning and said quietly, "Whatever it is, we leave it. Whatever it costs." She still didn't know the details, but she had always known enough. So you built your exit from the inside. You copied everything. Every order, every client profile, every identity you had created across 2 years, encrypted onto a hidden drive, a dead man's archive. And then you started sabotaging. Every new document embedded with invisible flaws. Barcodes transposed by a single digit. Security threads half a millimeter off. Holograms that passed visual inspection but would fail a digital border scanner. You were dismantling the empire using the same hands that built it. You thought you had more time. One of the sabotaged passports was flagged at a border 3 weeks early. The carrier gave up your location within hours. You went home. Nadia was in the kitchen with Lena, your wife at the counter, your daughter at the table working on a drawing, the room warm and lit and completely ordinary. You stood in the doorway and understood this was the last time it would look like this. You told Nadia to take Lena and go. No bags, no explanation. Just go. She looked at you. That look, the one that had always seen everything. She didn't ask questions. She picked up Lena, kissed you once, and walked out the back door. She didn't look back. 30 seconds later, the front door came in. He was standing there, the first man, the beginning of everything, exactly as unhurried as the evening he had slid that folder across your desk. 2 men behind him. "Welcome to the end of betrayal," he said. When you came back to consciousness, the workshop was ash, but they had left things behind carefully, deliberately. Folders, a paper trail built using your own techniques and seals, linking every crime the network had ever committed directly to your name. Every trafficking route, every death, all of it bearing your signature. Then, an anonymous call to the police. When the officers arrived, they didn't find an innocent man being framed. They found a forge master in the ruins of his workshop, fingerprints on everything. The handcuffs closed around your wrists. You looked at your hands one last time. These hands. The golden hand. The ones that had turned paper into $30,000. The ones that had held Lena 20 minutes after she was born. The ones that had found Nadia's in the dark before she could reach for yours. You had forged your own cage. Nadia took Lena somewhere far, changed their names, erased every trace of you to protect them from a world you had invited in. You don't know where they are. You hope wherever it is, Lena is drawing at a kitchen table somewhere warm and ordinary. You hope Nadia has found something on the other side of you that resembles peace. At night, you look at your hands in the dark of the cell. They called you the Golden Hand. You created thousands of identities for people who used them to destroy others. And the only identity you destroyed completely, the father, the husband, the man at a kitchen table trying to keep the lights on, was your own. The hands that built new lives for thousands of strangers cannot write a single letter to your own daughter. You built the door, and you are the only one still paying for it.